Assalamualaikum. Welcome to Islamic Finance at the Capital. Today we are honoured to have Datuk Muhammad Fazli Yusof, the first ever CEO of any takaful company in the modern Islamic finance world, and also the director and principal consultant of First International Group, a company which specializes in providing consultancy and advisory for Islamic finance. Welcome to the Capital, Datuk.
Thank you so much.
Let's cut to the chase, Datuk. Before there was Syarikat Takaful Malaysia, there was basically no Islamic finance or takaful Islamic finance insurance company in the world. How did it materialize?
I think it is not quite correct to say that before Takaful Malaysia was established, there was no Islamic insurance company as such.
Right.
In fact, there were two Islamic insurance companies operating before Takaful Malaysia. One was in Sudan and one was operating from Saudi Arabia, but not for the Saudi market as such. But these two companies basically provided only what we call now as general takaful, products for the general business. Of course, when we came back to Malaysia, I remember I met a scholar.
When was this?
Well, at that time when we first established Takaful Malaysia, we just started our operation, and I met him. He was one of those senior religious officials in one of the states in Malaysia, and his body, or he was representing an Islamic religious council of one of those states, and that particular council was one of the shareholders of Takaful Malaysia then. So when I had an informal chat with him, he said, of course, I studied at College Islam, he said. Way back in the 50s, we knew that insurance that we used to have facilities actually was not based on Sharia principles, but nothing can be done at that time. Even if we wanted,
That time was in the 50s.
in the 50s, or even in the 60s, even we wanted to introduce one at that time, it was impossible, simply because there were not even any Muslim, for that matter, having any experience in insurance business, because there were no Muslims working particularly at the management level of insurance companies at that time.
Even on conventional insurance
I'm
company.
talking about conventional insurance.
Right.
So I think to a certain extent, the experience of managing an insurance company really helped when we come to managing a takaful company or an Islamic insurance company.
But how did it come about?
Okay.
Having
What happened was that in the late 70s, there was a big urge by Muslims in general in Malaysia to have some form of Islamic finance.
Was it a religious urge or was it a political urge?
It was, to me, it was a religious urge at that time. It was more on banking.
Right.
So I think when there was a big urge among the rakyat, the government had to do something.
Otherwise, they will lose votes.
Yeah, of course, politically it will not be good for them. And then in particular, if the government said that they struggle to strive to establish an Islamic system, being a Muslim country. So whether they like it or not, they have to do something. So what happened was that way back in late 70s, the government took the initiative by looking into how Islamic banking can be operationalized in Malaysia.
When you say the government, was there any particular figure which pushed for it, or was it just a general government push?
It came out actually in the early 80s when Malaysia at that point of time having that policy of injecting Islamic values into the society or into the system.
Right.
So that was the time. There was a big urge at that time. And then, of course, at that time, a lot of things that we have to follow the Islamic system and whatnot, injecting infusion of Islamic Islamic values
Right.
into so many areas
Right.
of business as well as administration.
Right. And one of which is banking and
One
insurance.
of which was banking.
Right.
Then the approach was that I was told, as I understood at that point of time, there were parties from overseas who were willing to establish Islamic banking in Malaysia.
When you say parties, funders, or they want to come into
They
Malaysia
want to come
sell?
and operate.
Right.
You know, people from the Middle East.
Right.
You know. But I think the government took a step that if we wanted to introduce, we better do it ourselves.
But I find it strange because you said people from the Middle East, but there were no
At that point
Islamic
of time,
insurance company in the Middle East.
No, I'm talking about banking now.
Right, on banking,
I'm
right?
banking. They were at that time already established Islamic banking
Right.
in the Middle East. But you see, the difference between us and the Middle East is that the initiatives taken in the Middle East actually were by individuals, not run by the government. But when it come to Malaysia, it was slightly different.
Right.
So these individuals who are now established Islamic banking, you know, we have Dalah Group, we have Faisal Islamic Group. They were interested to come and establish banks, Islamic banks here. But I think Malaysia took the step at that time not to allow them to operate. So if we wanted to do it, why not we do? Why can't we do it ourselves? So because you see, I think I agree on that. I think that was a very right decision to do it. Then what happened was that we can't simply go out just open up shop.
This was still in the late 70s or the early 80s?
Late 70s. You know, simply you cannot go out to the field. Here is Islamic banking. You can't do that. You know, you must remember these have implications on the interest of the people. So what happened was that the government set up a special team. They call it National Steering Committee to study the establishment of Islamic banking in Malaysia.
And where was the committee or the secretariat house?
At the PM's department. Okay, it was set up, if I'm not mistaken, under the auspices of Majlis Perundingan Islam, Islamic National Consultative Council, which is, the secretariat was at the PM's department. So the chairman of the committee, the National Steering Committee, was Allahyarham Tun Raja Moha. So the committee actually comprising of bankers, lawyers, Islamic scholars.
And how were the committee members chosen?
It was chosen by the government. It was chosen by the government, but representing Sharia, representing the economies, representing bankers, practitioners, existing bankers, current bankers at that time. And of course, you draw the scholars from the higher learning institutes.
Do you remember how many members were there in the council?
I can't remember at that point. So you see, I was not a member of that committee, but what I was told, because one of the members of the committee was Dr. Abdul Halim, who later became the founding managing director
Of Bank Islam.
of Bank Islam, and also the founder chairman of Syarikat Takaful Malaysia. So what happened was that while they were examining on how to establish Islamic banking, so Islamic banking was still on the drawing board at that time. The issue of insurance cropped up. So the issue was that if we have Islamic banking,
There must be.
It cannot be fully considered as full-fledged Islamicness of the bank until and unless the insurance part also is Islamized, if I can use the term Islamized. All right? So, because practically all aspects of banking, be it to cover the interests of customers or the interests of the bank itself, would require some form of insurance. So how can we say Islamic banking is truly Islamic if the major part of its operation still require the conventional insurance for its protection and insurance requirement? So that was the reason why. But then the National Steering Committee on Banking, the terms of reference for them was not to look into insurance. So they recommended.
So initially it was just for banking?
Yes, banking.
Right.
They recommended that another team be set up, of which I were involved.
Right. So basically, they set up two committees.
Correct. So the team is called the task force. The task force badan petugas bagi mengkaji penubuhan sebuah syarikat insurans di Malaysia. So translated roughly into English as a special task force to examine the establishment of an Islamic insurance company in Malaysia. Mind you, the word takaful does not arise at that point in time.
Was not even in existence.
Not even in the vocabulary
Right.
that.
And where were you attached during that time?
I was working with an insurance company.
Right.
Okay, so I was roped in. My background was a little bit of banking and broadcasting.
Right.
So insurance is something which is new to me.
Right.
But somehow or other, as I said, not many Malay Muslims, Bumi Putra Muslims, were engaged at the management level of insurance company at that point of time. So whether like it or not, I happen to be in that group. So I was selected, to be a member. I was working then with an insurance company, as I said, after leaving the bank.
And this was still the late 70s?
This was early 80s.
Early 80s.
Early 80s, It was established in early 83. So then again, following the structure of the National Steering Committee on Bank, the Special Task Force also had representation for its members, drawing from Sharia, which we came basically from universities, local universities, 3 scholars from there, I remember, and then practitioners like myself, government actuary, representation from the regulators. At that time was from the Ministry of Finance, which was the Director General of Insurance, DGI, which was attached at that time as part of the department within the Ministry of Finance. And then legal experts, draftsmen who can draft the law from the Aegis Chamber. So
only Aegis Chambers, not from the private sector?
No. Aegis Chamber is the Attorney General's chamber. Because we need people, we need those experts to draft the law,
legislation.
Legislation. But the chairman, we have a very able chairman, Allahyarham Tan Sri Dato Ahmad Muhammad Ibrahim, who was at that time the Sheikh Kuliah of Law, or the Dean of Kuliah of Law.
Somebody who's a stickler for details and time.
All right, insurance, Islamic insurance, something new. So we were groping, but we thank Tan Sri Allahyarham. He prepared the exposure paper. I remember in short.
Exposure paper on banking or on takaful?
On takaful. The title of the paper was Towards an Islamic System of Insurance. That was his exposure paper. So there were no reference. It was difficult to get any reference from anywhere. Number one, as I said, the establishment of Islamic insurance company at that point of time was very new. The 2 companies I mentioned earlier, operating one in Saudi and one in Sudan, actually were only 1 or 2 years old, and meant only to handle general business, and meant also to complement the Islamic banking operation of their parent company. For example, in Sudan, the Islamic Insurance Company of Sudan was established initially to complement the needs of insurance of its Faisal Islamic Bank, because it belonged to Faisal Group. And then Islamic Arab Insurance Company was part of the Dalah Group. And again, to fulfill the Islamic or the insurance requirement of the Dalah Bank, Islamic Bank, under the Dalah Group.
Dato', hold on to your thoughts. We shall discuss this further. We shall take a commercial break. Welcome back to Islamic Finance at the Capital. Today, we have Dato' Muhammad Fazli Yusof, who is the pioneer CEO of the first Malaysian takaful company. Dato',
Thank you. Yeah.
what is so special about takaful or Islamic insurance that we need to have it separate from conventional insurance? Isn't conventional enough?
All right. I did mention to you earlier on that the chairman of the task force prepared the exposure paper. And while deliberating his paper by the task force members, he said, precisely, under Islamic system of insurance, the user, the consumer, or what we call as the policy holder, would have the opportunity to avail himself a free cover.
That's something totally radical or new.
I was shocked.
Right.
I said, at that time, I was working with an insurance company. A
So you were
conventional
shocked
insurance.
because you're thinking that the ringgit that'll be going out.
I was shocked, yeah, because I said to him, insurance is a business of covering liability.
Yes.
It is not like buying, a peanut. If an accident occurred, a claim can be anything up into millions, and the premium paid is only maybe few hundred ringgits.
Yes.
So there is no parity between the price
Right.
and the service being provided.
Right.
So I can't comprehend. And he said, I don't know, because I'm not a practitioner, but this is the Shariah way. Okay. That is a very key,
Principle.
yes, important to me statement, which later I understand why or what he meant by having free cover. That shaped my thinking in terms of how we should do